Hey everyone, welcome back. And today I'm doing another thesis. This time it's not going to be one of those data central companies, but rather it is an apparel company. And in this case, I'm going to be talking about LULUlemon. This company has been really shut down and just pummeled recently in the market, down almost 50% more than 50% this year. So let's go over what their core business is, and then let's get into the headwinds, tailwinds, and see where I actually think it stands as a company. So the core business, I think everyone knows Lululemon. It is a clothing brand, right? They're selling clothing and essentially direct to the consumer. Really, what they're doing is they're finding a way to increase the margins of clothing, whether that be applying a brand name to it, whether it be increasing the quality or reducing the cost to get it to the consumer with direct to consumer shipping or direct to consumer sales. So that's really the core of their business. So when it comes to selling with clothing, right, this is where they make essentially all of their money. They have vertical integration, which lowers the cost, right? With in-house designs and high quality checks and high responsiveness. Those are two things that are intended to essentially make sure that the quality they have, even though they have lower cost, that you still are able to provide a higher quality. Innovation with proprietary fabrics. This is actually something that should theoretically give them a market edge if because consumers are willing to pay a bit extra, especially if they're getting better fabrics, getting better material and a better product. You're willing to pay a bit more. For example, people are definitely willing to pay more for something like an organic milk compared to a regular milk. And even if the costs at the end are comparable. The direct-to-consumer side, what you have is this really results in higher margins. This is going to be a Lululemon direct stores. When you walk into those, that's just all they sell, and it's actually a pretty nice store. I've been in a couple myself, and I have not been disappointed by it. But they also go into e-commerce. This is really getting rid of that brick and mortar and being able to sell online, which is lowering that cost even more because now you don't even have to hire people to staff to essentially staff the uh, the shops, and you're able to just sell online and people buy as they need, as they want, and it's open 24/7, and it's great. So I really don't think there's that many tailwinds for an apparel company like Lululemon. So let me just go into these. So really, these are the two things I think Lululemon is able to compete in, which would be the market expansion and the guest experience. And market expansion, Lululemon has always been known, when you think of it as that yoga pant brand, essentially, and that leggings brand. And what they're trying to do is expand to men's products. And this is definitely, I think, an area that Lululemon could definitely succeed in. Men's fashion isn't really as built out as a guy, I would know. So I would love if different companies were to come in and give men branding similar to what women have, but it's not really something that's there. They're also trying to expand the footwear. The pros and cons of that, I'm not really sure about. I've seen the numbers and I'm not blown away by them. But the part that is really interesting is that international expansion. They have low 20% growth in China, at least in the last year, and internationally they've had decent high teens, low 20s growth for internationally, which means outside of the United States. But when we get to the headwinds, I'll talk about why that really isn't as big of a deal as you probably would think. So the guest experience is definitely something else that was a tailwind for Lululemon for a while. They really allows for more e-commerce buzz with how good their stores are, and especially because of how much of their sales and how much of their influence is peer-to-peer. Especially with influencers talking about their type of yoga pants and basically people raving about it, and it became such a part of the popular zeitgeist, especially a couple years or a few 5 years ago, that it became a status symbol. Hey, I got this Lululemon product, where everyone wanted Lululemon product because it was Lululemon, not because necessarily of the quality. And because of how fickle the consumer is and how fickle these trends come and go, this really is something that's fading, especially the buzz from the influencers. Different companies are also stepping in to provide a similar type of experience that Lulu used to provide. But so I really don't think that this tailwind is going to be around for that much longer, and they are going to have to compete on something else. So that being said, right, I do think that they have really strong headwinds against them right now. And this is going to be essentially, I'm going to make 3 points here. There, there's a bunch of US saturation in the market, which when it comes to Lululemon, it feels like anyone who would have bought a Lululemon item already bought it, or if they, and there's not really much incentive for people to go out and buy more of it. Except we also have competition, and with that competition, right, it increases that US saturation of people who want it, and competition directly eats into Lululemon's top line. The margin pressures is something else that's coming in because of this competition and the saturation. They're getting forced to lower the pricing, which then means that they have lower margins to actually work with. So let's talk about the market saturation first. It seems like Lululemon items, if you have one, you probably already have one, and the items don't are built to last for a while. So it's not like you're going out and buying a new pair of Lululemon leggings every single year. And even if you did, it's not really, it looks like consumers aren't doing that anymore, at the very least. If you look at Q2, right, they had a 4% decrease in sales, which is not, or in comparable sales, which is not what you want to see from a company that essentially has projected high teens, low 20s growth just into the future. And that's part of the reason why that price has been tanking recently. It's because of that so much that slowing growth rate. And other thing, out of date, and this is going to be something that I'm going to keep harping on, especially for the American consumer. The market saturation is there. Lululemon is not the hot new thing anymore. It isn't that, oh, everyone wants a Lululemon. Now it's, oh, everyone wants a Laboob, or things along those lines. So I do think that this market saturation issue is a medium to high part type of headwind for Lululemon. Next up, we get in competition. When Lululemon started, they were really the only brand that were doing this type of athleisure leggings items. And but now everyone, there's so many people that are stepping in here. You got Alo Yoga, you got Viore, and you even have companies like Costco, like Costco and Signature jumping in, trying to make not knockoffs but dupes of it. And with so many choices in the market, anything to separate themselves, these companies are doing. So when something like this happens, they are complete substitutes. They're basically identical substitutes, and consumers are going to be really choosing the ones with better pricing or the ones that are just slightly more geared towards them. So Lululemon has really lost that edge where it used to be the only one in this market. Now they're actually having to fend off so many other people that if they aren't in vogue anymore, right? I think sports leggings or athleisure is always going to be in vogue simply because people all want to be seen as athletic and they want to be do things leisurely. But it's the increase in competition. The fact that when Lululemon stepped into this industry, there was no one else really doing that type of item, and now everyone's trying to go for that market. And that amount of competition is really, really dragging on Lululemon, and I don't see this changing anytime soon. Margin pressures, and this is really going to be something that's also stickier for Lululemon because they are an importer of items. The tariffs are going to make it marketable impact on their margins. And what you also see is that they're having stale inventory that's getting carried over for longer and longer, which means that they have to knock down their pricing to be able to sell. Of course, a lot of this is talking about within the United States. And yes, they do have rapid growth outside of the United States, but their main portion of their revenue is within the United States. It is 70% of their revenue. And if that 70% is not growing, the rest 30% has to grow essentially 3 times as fast to make up for that growth rate. And that you simply aren't going to do that, right? If you want a 20% growth rate year over year and 70% of the company's not growing, you're really forcing that 30% of the company to grow almost at a 60% clip, which is absolutely unsustainable. So that being said, right, let's actually get on to my overall thesis. I know this one is not nearly as long because I don't think there's that much to talk about when it comes to an athleisure brand. When it comes to clothing, people have their opinions, and whether it goes up or down, it really comes down to whether or not the company is in favor, whether or not economic conditions are favorable to them, and whether or not it's in vogue and it's part of the popular zeitgeist. And the issue is for Lululemon, the tailwinds that they have really are not strong enough to overcome the headwinds. I do not see anything there to be able to be comparable. They definitely do have a decline in the US, but that is slightly offset by the increase in international sales. International sales, however, aren't going to be able to make up for all of it. Because the US consumer is the consumer that buys the most items in the entire world. We consume the most out of the entire world. So losing customers within the biggest consumer base is going to hurt much more than gaining consumer bases outside of the United States. Right, I've talked on this a bunch. The fading cultural relevance with Lululemon is a big hit to what they are because a lot of what their branding was, a lot of their advertising was peer to peer. It is not something like it's not something that you would see online, and you don't really see Lululemon advertisements. I do see because of that, they are really at a mature company. So I do think that because they are a company that does show good management, I do think that they should be able to sustain high single digit returns. And so it is possible that they're slightly undervalued right now because of all the negative sentiment baked in. So let's actually get to what I think that the where Lululemon stands. So their overall price right now is 153. Sorry, the current price is at 169, about $170. And with my revenue pricing and my free cash flow analysis, I do get them to about $155. I know this might seem weird to you, but it might be against what I was saying before with like companies S&P Global and FICO, where I gave them a full score, despite the fact that they have their current price is a bit higher than where I think their intrinsic price is. The reason for that is I do see those two companies being able to grow at 15% clips at a with much less concern than something like Lululemon. And for that, I don't see Lululemon being something I would be comfortable holding in a portfolio. So I have to give it a sell rating. Therefore, in conclusion, Lululemon has a lot of headwinds that I think really overtake the tailwinds that they have. But I do think that management should be able to pull through and sustain reasonable growth over the long term. If you guys enjoyed enjoy what I'm doing here, thank you guys for listening and leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. Tell me what other companies you guys would like to see me analyze and whether or not you agree or disagree with everything I said here. Thank you so much and hope you guys have a great rest of your day.